The year is 1942. World War II is at its peak. In terms of strategy, World War II was dominated by aviation, armor, radio, cryptography, and radar. In the Pacific, Japan's power seemed unstoppable. The Lightning War, or Blitzkrieg, had generated a new paradigm of dynamism in maneuver. However, on June 4, 1942, everything stopped at a small atoll in the middle of the Pacific, Midway. The Battle of Midway was a crucial engagement, marking a significant turn in favor of the U.S., thanks to the effective use of intelligence. But that victory was based on an incredibly small margin of error and on human decision-making under extreme pressure. Our point of divergence, PD, is simple, militarily plausible, and based on intelligence. What if U.S. naval intelligence had failed to decipher the Japanese plans, or if the decisive attack by its bombers had not achieved the operational surprise that proved crucial? This adheres to the requirement that the best counterfactuals begin with plausible worlds that imply minimal changes to the real world. In the real world, the U.S. prevailed thanks to the effective use of intelligence. But in this alternative timeline, the attack by the U.S. Dauntless bombers fails to locate the Japanese aircraft carriers Kaga, Akagi, Soryu, and Hiryu at the critical moment. The Japanese fleet, led by Yamamoto, successfully launches its second strike, annihilating the U.S. carriers Yorktown and Enterprise. The result is a decisive defeat for the United States Navy. The immediate impact is devastating. Japan not only maintains but significantly increases the initiative in the Pacific. The Japanese objective of eliminating the U.S. carrier fleet and forcing a favorable negotiation dangerously nears reality. This outcome would prolong the conflict and cause a greater human cost for both sides. Strategically, the Pacific War is prolonged and intensified. The Battle of Midway in the real world marked the turning point where the U.S. could transition from defense to offense. With the defeat, the offensive is delayed perhaps a year or more. The Guadalcanal campaign, which began in the real world in August 1942, becomes unsustainable or impossible. Japan solidifies its defensive perimeter and consolidates the vast territorial areas it had acquired at the start of the war. This forces the U.S. to fight with a significant naval disadvantage. The naval contest in the Pacific War, marked by the use of armored ships and air power, shifts drastically in Japan's favor. For the Allies, the defeat necessitates a painful strategic reevaluation. The military leadership in Washington, already facing the pressure of the war in Europe, must divert vital resources that were intended for the European front and support for the Soviet Union toward the Pacific. The conflict witnessed the dramatic experience of displaced persons, evacuees, and refugees. World War II resulted in a human tragedy with 340,000 Soviet soldiers and 45,000 Canadian soldiers dead, in addition to 35 million wounded and 3 million missing. Any diversion of resources would have impacted the Red Army's ability to resist and the Allies' ability to execute D-Day. The failure of the Blitzkrieg on extensive fronts like Russia was due to a lack of resources and the underestimation of local resistance. By having to prioritize the Pacific theater, military logistics, a critical factor that determines the success or failure of campaigns, is stretched to the breaking point in the Atlantic. The North Africa campaign becomes more precarious, and the Axis defeat on that continent could have been delayed, which would have relieved pressure on Hitler on the Eastern Front. Time is the most precious factor the Allies lose with this defeat. The alternative timeline leads us into a longer, more costly war of attrition. Instead of a continuous offensive, the U.S. is forced into a slow and expensive campaign of recovery, island by island, without the advantage of carrier naval superiority. This aligns with the principle that counterfactuals must be sensitive to the strategic behavior that might return history to its original course, but the cost of that correction would be immense. The Lightning War had failed in Russia, but the tenacious Japanese defense in the Pacific would turn into a prolonged and bloody trench warfare. Research into World War II leaders such as Patton and Montgomery found that success requires adaptability. In this scenario, American leadership would be forced into radical innovation under the pressure of scarcity. To be a leader at the operational level, the study of military history and great leaders is useful. The analysis of causality, the raison d'etre of counterfactual history, focuses here on naval air supremacy, since almost all causal statements imply some type of counterfactual. The aircraft carrier, which had proven its value in World War II, reaffirms itself as the dominant weapon. By not losing its carriers at Midway, Japan maintains the initiative and forces the U.S. Navy to fight on its own terms. Rigor demands being exhaustive in data collection and honest in presentation. Real-world data confirms that the loss of a single carrier at that time would have been catastrophic for the American side. The primary lesson of this scenario is the decisive role of intelligence and leadership under pressure. The victory at Midway in reality was due to the effective use of intelligence. Its failure in this counterfactual scenario underscores how a small failure in data collection or analysis, especially in cryptography, can radically modify geopolitical factors. Understanding what did not occur is crucial to valuing why the victory actually happened. The Battle of Midway was the thin line between a short Pacific War and a conflict of years-long attrition. The failure of intelligence changed the fate of millions. Do you believe the atomic bomb would have arrived in time to force an end to such a prolonged war, or would the devastation have continued far past 1945? Leave your counterfactual scenario in the comments below. If you found this rigorous strategic analysis valuable, support us with a like, subscribe to the channel for more military history and geopolitics documentaries, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into an alternative past.